Okay, so my name's Petrina Tan. I was originally from Malaysia. I was born there. I spent the first 20 plus years over there. My parents were middle class income earners, so they were both working. And my brother and I, my older brother and I, were made to be very independent at a very young age. Because in those days, you didn't really have any like rules for children, leaving children at home alone, as long as they didn't, beat themselves up or anything like that. So that happened. I think we were
Simpler
left.
times.
Pardon?
Simpler times.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think we were left alone probably basically around the ages of about 8, 7, 8, around that time. So very independent. My mum would go to work and we had to get ready for school ourselves. Either the bus would pick us up or, a joint carpool parent will actually pick us up. So she would make our meal and put it in a flask, a thermos flask, and keep it warm. And obviously, we weren't allowed to use the stove or anything like that. So we would just eat the hot food or the warm food from the flask, and we get ready for school. So that is where I think I got a lot of my independence from, not having to rely on people. And then in school, I was made a prefect and eventually the assistant head prefect. So a lot of responsibilities from very young age. I used to have to address a crowd of about, I think, 2,000 students at the age of like, I think 15, 16, and then do
Wow.
all the announcements and all that. Yeah. So I'm quite used to using mics and stuff like that. And then what else did I do? So went on to study accountancy. And my parents, as I mentioned, because they weren't able to afford to send my brother and I overseas, what it is where I come from. Malaysia is a lovely country. However, there's some sort of discrimination going on even till now. Whereas if you're not born to a certain race or religion, then it's very difficult to get into the universities. So that's why most
Right.
of us actually are sent overseas to actually get a better life. So my brother went first, being the boy, and I was left at home. And then I thought, well, I don't think my parents will have enough money to actually send me over. However, when I was due to do the last year of my accountancy studies, my dad said, well, he's got just enough to actually send me over for the last year. So off I went at the age of about 22, I think 22 and a half, nearly 23. Came over to London for not the first time. I had been to London before as a sort of like a traveler, as a visitor. However, on my own as a student, that was the first time. And I was living with a English family. They put me up for a week. They were in Surrey, and the thing is, the travel to the college, which was in North London at the time, was going to be like an hour and a half away,
That's a
and
long journey.
yeah, and expensive as well. So in those
Yeah.
days, you're a student, so every little penny or pound counts. So that couple, they said, well, you can carry on living with us. However, the journey is going to really tire you out, and obviously the expenses as well. So we got myself registered into or signed into a hostel. It was a mixed hostel. And then because I didn't want to sort of burden my parents again, most of the students in those days, what happened was the parents will send them overseas. And then when they run out of money, they will actually ask the parents for more. And I'm just not the sort of person who wants to live off somebody else, even though it's my parents.
Hmm.
So I said I'm going to work my way up. So I didn't have any savings at all the time. I had enough money. My course fees was paid for. Obviously, my airfare was paid for. Accommodation was paid for a couple of months. And then I knew I was going to run out anyway because it was hostel, so it's not the cheapest accommodation. I think it was about £75 a week, something like that. So in those days, it's like about 30 years ago. It's quite a lot of money, especially if you're a student. So I started doing
Oh,
the odd jobs in the hostel, like serving, doing. There was obviously buffet and stuff like that. So I was actually doing the serving of the food, cleaning up, washing, and things like that. And I got also a job as receptionist in the hostel. Thankfully, it wasn't very busy, so I could actually multitask as well. Just sit down there at reception and do my own work, studies, and all those things. And yeah, I managed to save up enough and I passed my exams. And then I said, well, this hostel is going to be too expensive to carry on. So I actually moved out to Ilford, found a job there, and that's where I've been ever since. Got used to the area there.
wow.
Yeah.
So, fun fact, my mum was born in Ilford.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Great.
but I've never been. I've never
Oh,
been at
wow.
all
You
because
must
I
you
should
must
go
come up one
sometime, should I?
day.
Oh
Yeah,
well.
so I managed to get a job there, and I was actually walking to work. I moved out from renting from a hostel to renting a room uh, with a family. And I don't know what I was thinking at that time. I think I was just more thinking about the convenience of being able to walk to work, like 15, 20 minutes walk to work. So that family was a husband and wife, and they had actually four kids, four young kids, and me. So it was
Oh
a
wow.
pretty loud, noisy house. But I was more concerned about how I was going to get to work and all that. So I didn't really mind. I had to share the kitchen and things like that. I had my own room with a basin, and obviously the toilets and kitchen had to be shared and all that. So I stayed there for about 4+ years. And one day when I was walking to work, there was another couple just further down, about maybe 10 minutes down the road. And the wife was actually asking me, do you know anyone who wants to rent a room? So I said, well, I'm okay where I am, but I'll ask around. And I left it as that. And then one December, I still remember, it was around 2 weeks before Christmas. The family that I was renting from, they somehow said, listen, we need the room back. You have to get out. I said, what do you mean I have to get out? They said, well, you've got like a few weeks to get out according to the tenancy agreement. So I said, listen, I'm on my own. It's almost Christmas. It's snowing. How am I going to find a place? And even though after four plus years of renting with them, they didn't have any sympathy. They said, you just have to get out. We don't care.
Wow.
So it was hard. So, and then I remembered I said hello to that other family. So I went back to that family and I said, well, do you still have the room available? And they said, yes. So I moved in, managed to move in before Christmas, which was great. And it was handy because I had a little car at the time, was a Rover Metro. I still I remember it, my very first car. So I actually took my belongings all in the car, like a few trips. And that was, I moved in. And then because of that hurdle that I had to overcome of trying to find accommodation, during Christmas as a single person at that time, I said to myself, I'm never ever going to let someone be in charge of my accommodation again, meaning that I'm
Hmm.
not going to rent. I'm just going to buy my own place. Now, what you need to understand is I'm a foreigner, and I was in a sort of like work visa then. I didn't really have a right to stay continually in this country.
Hmm.
So when I told my parents, I said, listen, after what I've gone through, I'm never ever going to rent again. I'm going to buy my own place. Everyone thought I was mad because, they said, well, what if your visa runs out and you have to leave the country? I said, well, you just sell the house. But a lot of them didn't quite get it that way. They were like more concerned about, you're going to be stuck with the house and you're going to be stuck with loan. And I said, I'm just going to take it a day at a time. So within about 6 months, I managed to find my own one bedroom starter home, stayed there, and then I slightly outgrew the place and got my existing house anyway. So that's how it
Amazing.
is, my journey.
So your whole journey, in your up until your 20s was about independence, self-reliance, but also kind of going against the convention of everybody
Yes.
else,
Yeah.
and proving wrong. And how have you carried that forward and into all the businesses that you have now?
So what happened was I carried on working in accountancy practice, and it happened to be I don't regret studying accountancy, but the thing is, it's especially if you're working in practice, it's always very long hours. Like
Hmm.
the interview that we're doing now, it wouldn't happen if I was working full time in that place because it
Sure.
was just like so many deadlines, and many people they don't understand when I talk about deadlines. My longest holiday most of the time would be Friday to Monday if I can even get that
Oh,
2 days and the weekend. Most of the time I was working 6, 7 days a week. The pay was good. However, I didn't have quality of time to myself. So about 15 years ago, I told myself, I said, I just need to get out and change. And again, because I was in such a sort of like high position in the firm, when I sort of handed in my resignation, most of my colleagues just could not believe it. They said, I thought you're going to be here for life, right? I said, what do you mean? I thought you thought. I said, well, this is my life. They were enjoying seeing me working and they having the
wow.
benefits of it. And, I said, I just can't carry on. And that was in my late 30s when I did that
Hmm.
decision. And again, many people said, what are you going to do? you don't have any other things to do. You don't have men in your life. I said, well, just carry on and let life be, basically. So with my spare time, I was able to take a 2-week holiday with my parents. We went on a cruise. And I was not actually, I reached that age, I think it was in my early 40s at the time. So again, what happens is when you come from a family like mine, the Asian culture, the Eastern culture, they tend to pressure you into getting married or having children by a certain age. And
Hmm.
it was good because I put up with that for like 10 plus years in my mid 20s, 30s. And then as you get older, they tend to like, she's going to be left on the shelf. So I said, fine, just leave me alone, right? I'm happy as I am. And then I wasn't actually looking for anyone. And then on that holiday, it was actually when I met my husband. It wasn't
Oh,
planned because on that 10-day cruise, my parents went and Ronald was invited because Ronald actually knew my parents, that's my husband. And my dad was sharing a cabin with him, and me and my mom were sharing cabin. Now, I'd never been on a cruise before, but I'd heard a lot about it. This was back in 2011. This is like 13 years ago. So it's pretty modern. I just packed my bags along and went, and I thought everything's going to be fine, right? Now, little did we know that we had lovely time on a cruise that there's, everything's included, like, all the food's included, drinks and stuff. And, there's entertainment, there's dancing, there's everything on board, right? And we had a lovely time for 7 days. And then on the seventh night itself, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. We were sleeping and we heard a loud bang and it just went pitch dark.
oh
Now,
no.
I've never been on a cruise, my first time in the sea. Most people would just
Not
think
what you want.
Titanic, right? Titanic. We've hit an iceberg, but we weren't.
Where's the iceberg?
Exactly. Anyway, it was pitch dark, couldn't see, and thankfully the cabin was small. We didn't pay for the best cabin, so obviously there was actually no windows. We couldn't actually see outside. So my mum and I said, well, the cabin's small, we can't really get lost, but if we go outside, it's pitch dark anyway. There's no point. So let's wait. And then Ronald came with his Iridology torch, little torch with Iridology, and came to our room and said, "Are you okay?" We said, "That's fine." And he said,
Ah,
he'll go and check what's happening because they never announced on the ship, what's happening. Anyway, when we found
but
out,
also I've seen Titanic, and the third class they get abandoned, so you've
yes,
got to be careful.
yeah, exactly. And actually, we were on quite a high floor, like about ninth floor or something. The crew actually stay on the lower floors.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
so they'll
So
get abandoned.
exactly, exactly. So what happened was we were told that the generator had broke down. The ship has 4 generators. One had broken down, and we were stuck. Right. So when you go from 7 days of everything included, this is like 5-star treatment. Your drinks, your food, everything that you really want to eat. In fact, you eat too much on the ship anyway. And then that morning, we went down to bread and cheese. No hot water,
Oh
nothing, because they
wow.
couldn't cook. Yeah. So what happens is you actually get to see the real character of most people because for 7 days
Mm.
everyone was dressed up, everyone was polite because everything was working. The moment something didn't go right, like the toilets weren't flushing, the lifts escalator weren't working. Can you imagine walking down 10 flights of walking down is fine, walking up is obviously a bit of hurdle if you are mobile, but there were about 25% of the passengers out of about 4,000 who were not really that mobile.
Oh
So
gosh.
they were struggling. And obviously the mood was, negative, a lot of negativity. People in bad mood, they were, blaming the staff. And I think Ronald and I were one of the handful that we knew of that were just trying to make the best of the situation and trying to, just be positive. So we started seeing the both sides of ourselves. That's probably how we started as well, getting to know each other better. And then they managed to fix the generator, so we had good food again and lighting and all that night. However, the next morning again, another bang, and apparently the second generator broke down.
Oh gosh.
And that was basically the end of our holiday as such. However, not the end of the trip because what happened was we were abandoned at sea. Now we had to get the Navy to actually tow us to the
Oh
nearest
my
shore
life.
because we couldn't move. Now the thing is, so I'm not too sure why the staff weren't there to help us, but we were made to carry our own luggage from the ninth or 10th floor down, and obviously the people who were like disabled, Ronald was helping them as well.
Oh.
So again, I could see his characteristics from there as well. And then we were stuck in, I think it was Sweden. We were originally supposed to come back to Southampton, which is part of UK. However, because we were just towed to the nearest shore, we were brought back to Sweden. And again, we were now remember there's 4,000 people on the ship, and there's no flights because they are not expecting 4,000 people to be flying back from Sweden. They're expecting people to fly back from Southampton or travel from there. So again, it was a long queue, and you could see again tempers flying, everything, and we had to wait. Like we stayed in the airport overnight. We were promised a hotel, but it never came, so we had to just sit down and just try to sleep overnight on the chairs basically. And then we eventually came back, and then Ronald and I said, well, he had to go back to Malaysia because that's where he was based at the time. And we kept in touch for about 6 months, long distance. And then he said, well, would you like to come back to Malaysia to settle down and work because that's where I am? And then I said, I would love to because my parents are there. However, I'm based here. I've got a house here, I've got a job here, and it's going to be easier for him to uproot than me to actually go back. So it made sense. And then it was quite a long distance relationship for quite a while. Thankfully, in those days, we already had, cheaper, video calls and stuff like that. So
Yep.
it was manageable. And yeah, took it from there. And then if he eventually came over, and by that time, that's when I actually made the decision to actually work part-time.
Hmm.
And he said, well, why don't you study iridology with me? So I said, that's fine, we'll do that. And we actually started opening up clinic here, and that's how it went.
And it's a very successful clinic, isn't it, by all
Thank you.
accounts?
Yes. Yeah.
So let's talk about what you do with the clinic, and also you've been on TV shows for cooking as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So many different things that you're doing. So let's talk about that,
Okay.
and obviously
So
your journey through that.
our clinic is the iridology and nutrition clinic. So what we do is we have a special camera where we look into the eyes, and I've actually got the chart here. I'll just show you briefly. So after taking the photos of the eye, we actually look into this chart. And
Oh
from
wow.
there, you can actually see the various organs, how it links to the markings in the eye. And then we can
Yeah.
actually tell the weaknesses in various organs, such as the heart, the lungs, the liver, even before the symptoms arise. And then because of our knowledge of nutrition and herbs, we're able to recommend natural remedies.
Hmm.
And
And the
one,
natural remedies are really important to you, aren't they, in terms of not
they
using
are.
chemicals and drugs? Yeah.
Exactly. We're not totally against chemical medication. We always inform people that if someone was unfortunate enough to be in a very bad accident and they broke their arm and they're in pain, then by all means take the painkillers. However, in the longer term, the painkiller is actually harmful to the body. So you
Hmm.
actually need to find the natural remedies that will help sort you out as well. So that is
And
it.
what are the most common things that you're seeing at the moment?
Diabetes is one of them. Diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer, a lot of digestive issues. That's the most thing, and skin problems as well.
Oh wow. And is there, obviously from a mental wellbeing point of view, since the pandemic, I've seen a lot of increase in mental wellbeing challenges. Has there been any physiological challenges that you're seeing since the pandemic, or is this an ongoing trend?
Well, as you say, since the pandemic, it's got worse. I think the pandemic has forced, it's like someone like me, for example. I'm quite, I'm not totally against being with people, but I'm quite actually happy in my own company. However,
Yep.
many people are not. So I think the
Hmm.
pandemic actually affected them greatly because they just could not stay in the house. Whereas I was actually happy. I was happy. I was reading my books. I
I
was
was
doing
too.
gardening. I was cooking. I just entertain myself. However, many people they like to have people around. So that was the challenges. And also during the pandemic, because of the being at home, many people turn more into comfort foods, which was
Hmm.
unfortunately the processed foods and all that. So and then after you've actually gone into all these comfort type foods which are not good for you, to try to reverse it or come out of it, it's a bit more difficult. However,
Sure.
it's possible anyway. So
And with the people that you see, are they the treatments that you provide? Are they sort of 3, 4, 5, 6 months? Is it a case of changing your diet and then the problem goes away? I mean, I'm sure one size doesn't fit all, but are there again any patterns that you see?
yeah, we normally recommend at least a 3 months with us, because that's where you can actually have enough time to actually change the habits and be guided towards the right direction again. However, for more serious illnesses like diabetes, cancer, or even very bad psoriasis, which is a skin problem, then we would recommend at least 6 months to a year to actually get results.
Yeah,
And
that
we
seems
have
fair.
had many success stories. Even we've even helped those who have had cancer stage 3 and 4, where they've
Oh, wow.
actually been given, like, the life sentence, like few months to live. And because they've followed our recommendations, we won't actually take all the credit, because whatever we recommend, the person actually has to implement it as well. And this is where it's like a teamwork. So it's not only to do with the changes in your food intake, it's also the changes in your lifestyle, in your mental well-being as well. You need to
Hmm.
be a lot more positive. To give you an example, we years ago we helped this lady who was going around for 2 years around the circle. She was in pain. However, when she went to consult other professionals, everyone else said, we can't see anything wrong with you, we don't know what's wrong with you, just take painkillers. And she was taking the chemical painkillers for 2 years. And then one day she actually went to someone else, and that person actually diagnosed her as having stage 4 cancer. And thankfully, that was time where she actually heard of us through her daughter, because her daughter was actually one of our customers. So the daughter took the mom, to actually come and see us. And we obviously changed her meal plan, we changed everything. And the daughter actually did a good job, because she designed a very detailed plan as to what her mom should be not only eating based on what we are recommending, even things like exercises and the mindset as well. So there were like affirmations that she was getting the mom to actually say even every morning and throughout the day as well. So that really helped her, and she's obviously now well.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And obviously, your journey from Malaysia to the UK, accountancy to iridology, what has it meant for you, each change that you've made? What have you taken from it? And, are you going to do this forever, or do you see a different future in terms of trying something new?
Well, I I think what gives me, in accountancy, what happens is you may do the job. People may be begging you to do the clients will be begging you to do the job because of the deadlines, where you have fines if you don't do it. I'm sure everyone knows, like for tax returns, if you don't file it by a certain date, there's fines and things like that. However, what I found in accountancy is that many of the clients, after they've begged you for help and you've literally, put your soul out to help them on the last hour, when it comes to paying the bill, it's just like suddenly, too bad, you've done the job, wait, right? And I found it very being very unappreciated in that place. Whilst with the iridology, what gives us greatest pleasure is basically seeing the journey of the person from when they came to see us, how unwell they are, and
Hmm.
then within weeks or months, they're so much better. And when they
Yeah.
come and thank you, it's just, it's just unexplainable, the joy that
Yeah.
it gives us. And obviously the word spreads as well. Most of our customers are actually from recommendations. And that's really the best thing that's happened, really. And yeah, yeah,
Uh,
we want to actually start educating others as well, so that they can live better lives as well, rather than going through it, either suffering or having to have their loved ones take care of them because they are not well.
that's amazing. And you're right, because, I've worked in corporates, and it's long hours and it's ungrateful customers or demanding customers, and that's part of the way it is, isn't it? But
Yeah,
I, like you, was like, there's another way of living, there's another
yes,
way of serving,
yeah,
and for you it's iridiology, and that's wonderful. and
yeah.
and also the fact with you, what I love about you is the fact is you set your mind to something and you do it,
Mm-hmm.
and you just see that path through, and that's really interesting from a psychology point of view of when you set that intention, your brain finds a way to make it happen. And
It does.
but you have to be true to that intention, don't you? You can't half-heartedly think it. You have to really, really want this thing for it to happen.
Yes. And I think what I've learned along the way is that obviously, everyone in life, there's uncertainty. Nobody knows what's going to happen the next moment or even the next day, right? And many people tend to over worry about things that may not even happen. It's a lot of it is in our mind as well. So sometimes when I'm faced with a challenge and I really don't know what to do, I'll just switch off and do something else. Maybe go for a walk,
Yeah,
or if I'm too tired, I'll just have a nap. And you find that you feel better afterwards, and the answer actually comes, the solution actually comes. So
this
you
is
just
so
have to
true.
trust in the process. It's
Absolutely.
easier said
And
than done, though.
it is. But I love that, firstly going for a walk, getting outside in nature again, that's really good for your well-being anyway.
Yeah,
But also, like you say, when you stop thinking about the thing, the brain has time to process and go,
yeah,
oh, okay. And then suddenly it'll come to you.
exactly.
What brilliant. I often find mine are in the shower. I'm sitting away
That's a
thinking about
nice
nothing,
place
and then
as well.
like the idea comes.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And then what about your cooking that you do? So how does that tie into everything?
The cooking, I love cooking. As you know, I'm from Malaysia, so we eat a lot of variety of good food
Mm.
with a lot of herbs and spices and things like that. And this is one of the things I miss when I'm in sort of like a Western country, because the Western cuisine, thankfully now is a bit better because you've got all the multinationals around.
We borrowed everyone else's.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, the Western, most of the Western cooking is quite bland as well. So I enjoy cooking, and how I actually got on this TV studio show is I actually misread or misinterpreted a text one evening in a group chat. They were basically asking, are there any chefs who would like to be on a TV show? And I was thinking, like, would you like to be the audience in a TV show? And I've always wanted to be in the audience, never got a chance. So I just put my hat up, say yes. And I think I was probably maybe the only one who actually said yes. So the next day I got a text back and saying, are you a chef? And I said, well, not really. I have trained, but I'm not working as such in a restaurant. However, would you like to give me a try? They said, yes, come along. And it was the next day, they came along the studio. They said, do whatever you want, whatever recipe you want. So I cooked up one recipe. They loved it. And they said, would you come back next week? So I said, that's fine. And carried
Amazing.
on.
Do you know what? That's just one of those amazing happenstances where something happened, you went for it anyway, and it worked out okay.
Exactly.
And I
So,
guess
so
what was the worst
what's,
that could have happened?
yeah. And what's good about it is because I'd also had, already, I shared with you, I've been in crowds of 2000 at the age of 16. So crowds don't really like scare me. Sometimes maybe they do, but not all the time. And I also had been on some speaker training as well. So I still remember the first day when I went to this TV studio. I had my phone, obviously, I wanted to take photos, and I had all the
Yeah.
equipment of mine ready, make the most of it in case that's my first and only chance. And I still remember the producer came to me and said, Petrina, do you need like 10 minutes out of the kitchen just to compose yourself? I said, there's no composition needed. I'm happy where I am. Just leave me.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I managed to take all the photos that I wanted to take, and it was really good.
Have you been back since?
Yes, so I did it happened last year in July, mid-July. I did about 3.5 months, and then obviously the war started. They had some issues with the TV studio. So they told all of us to have a rest. And then they asked me back in March this year.
Oh,
I
amazing.
was occupied at the time, so I said I'll come back in April. So since April this year, I've actually been back. And in fact, I've just actually finished one recording earlier today as well.
And you came here after. Thank you so much.
Yes.
So, Petrina, international star.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And what's next for you? What's your next plan of what you want to do next? Is there a goal that you've set yourself?
Well, I think I'm not. We haven't actually mentioned. I've actually authored two books for my
Oh, yeah.
show. So this is my first book. This is a fun book
Hold.
which I did, Whole Truth or Half Truth. It's a
Amazing.
fun book which I had written about 90% of it for the last 10 years, and I never got it out because I didn't know how to get it out. So it's just a little book. Now, what this book is about is I was comparing the life in Asia and the life in the Western world. There are so many cultural differences. To quote you one example is when you go to someone's house to have a meal. In the Asian culture, if you want a second helping or you want extra something, the host will ask you, would you like a second helping? And you don't say yes if you want it. You just say no. And they'll sort of like try to beg you. It's sort of like a song and dance. And then
Mm.
eventually, you give in and say, yeah, there you go. And the host will give in as well. When I came to the UK, I was obviously 20 plus years brought up in that culture. So I lived with this English family. And when it came to like, would you like a second helping? I was still hungry. And I said no. And there I was. I learned my lesson. The plate was taken, and that was
Oh
yeah.
no!
I
how
learned that English is totally different. They don't
how
mind
long
eating more, but
how
you
long
just
before you sat there going, "Oh, I need to start saying yes, or I'll go hungry"?
yeah, exactly. Well, I wasn't really hungry, but I was just just wanted a bit more. So that was the gist of that book, and then so I published that book. I managed to find a mentor during lockdown, and he helped me publish this book, and it became the Amazon #1 bestseller as well on the day of the launch.
Amazing.
And then we carried on. That was in September 2020. And then last year in April, that same mentor said, you need to publish, that's a fun book, but you need to publish like a serious book to do it business, right?
Okay.
So we came up with this book, Ron and I. It's the
Oh,
diabetes
I've got
solution.
that one.
Oh, you
Yep,
have
I've
that
got
one?
that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. It's really good.
Yeah. So how we came up with this book is the mentor said, it's end of April. What are your goals? And he says, well, you need to publish this book by end of June. And after I'd been through this book, I knew the hassles of publishing, right? And I said, well,
Yep.
I'm up for the challenge, but I don't know. It's going to stress me out because you can see this book, this book is
It's a
so
lot
much
bigger.
bigger than that book, right? Have a look at the difference. And
Oh
this is a
yeah.
serious book, right? This is to do with health. So anyway, I took on the challenge, and for the past 6 weeks or so, I worked literally because I was still having a part-time job, still running the clinic, and I had to do this task, right? So a lot of late nights and stuff like that where I worked. And then when it came to about the fifth week, I had the content ready, but I knew that there will be challenges on Amazon because when I did the book like 3 years before, I had challenges when I did on my own. And when it came to the fifth week of writing the diabetes solution book, I knew I was going to come up with challenges Amazon because I'd not really even started on Amazon. I was just focused so much on just getting contents ready. So I said I need to ask for help. So I went to this event, and I knew someone there, and I knew she help people publish books. So thankfully she knew me, and I said, listen, I'm just asking as a friend. I know, it's hard, but I need to publish the book in 2 weeks because I had an 8 week goal, but I want to publish it in 7 weeks because in case you have like a week gap, in case anything goes wrong. And I said, so you'll have 2 weeks to help me, right? So can you do it? And she said, Petrina, because of you, I will do it, right? So I was
Uh,
really grateful. And so she helped me, and I'm really glad I asked for help because even she struggled because the rules on Amazon changed so vastly.
mhm.
And on the 7th week itself, for the five of consecutive days, we had emails bouncing back and forth from Amazon saying this page is like a little millimeter out. Can
Oh
you
my
change it?
life.
And we didn't even have a clue, right? So anyway, thankfully, the book finally came out within the time limit. So
I mean, that's an amazing challenge. And once again, it's just an indication of you and your sort of dedication to the goal.
yeah,
No matter what, you're going to achieve it. But the important thing was asking for help, right?
that's right.
It's amazing. And
Yeah.
was it also number one, I think?
Yes, it
Yeah.
also became Amazon #1. In fact, we managed to get the little
Oh yeah, number one bestseller.
yeah.
Yeah. Well
And the
deserved.
interesting thing is, on the day of the launch, we actually beat Gordon Ramsay's book and also the Harry Bikers. So we're very proud of that as well. Yeah,
Just goes to show a little bit of help and some
exactly,
perseverance.
exactly. So
But
thank
but
you to everyone who's supported me on the journey.
oh no, it's well deserved. And again, so you've done those two books. Is there a third book on the way? Is there something else on the way? Or are you gonna sit back and enjoy life for a bit?
Well, like I think this year I'm just gonna not sit back, but actually settle most of the other areas which I'm working on first before I actually publish the third book. Again,
Hmm.
the third book is actually going to be a recipe book, a cookbook, and
Lovely.
I did write part of it like many years ago, but obviously that's just on the shelf at the moment. So the plan is to actually finish it probably sometime next year, which is
And
where
how
the TV cooking as well will help as well to do with publicity and all that. So
absolutely, and well deserved again, right?
thank
You
you.
took a chance and it paid
Yeah,
off, so good for you.
yeah.
And when do you ever get overwhelmed? Do you ever get to the point where you're like, I don't know why I'm still doing this? Because obviously, running a business isn't easy, and I know you're saying now that you have all the time, but like you've gone through that process of part-time employment, running a clinic, writing a book, other things as well.
Yeah.
What do you ever get out of balance? And if you do, what do you do to manage that?
Yes, definitely. I'm human, as you know, as well. So yeah, in fact, there are many times I get overwhelmed with the tasks, especially when as you get older, the technology tends to change so much faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm finding that sometimes I just can't keep up, and this is where I've actually got help from either friends or mentors who actually are in that area as well, so they can help. And what I've learned is obviously everyone is an expert in various fields. So it may sound like a stupid question to you, but it's, as long as you get the right patient people to actually teach you in baby steps, then you'll be fine.
I think that's really crucial. Again, we're so, particularly with entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
the myth is that you have to hustle and struggle and do it all your own and have
Yeah.
that badge of honor. But actually, asking for help, people have been through that journey. They want to help. And
Yes.
even not in business, not in entrepreneurship, just in everyday stuff,
Yeah.
asking for help, I think, is something that we don't do enough.
Yeah. And I think also something else that I've overcome to a certain extent is because when I was working in corporate, I was also in the HR department, the human resources,
Hmm.
and I interviewed so many like employees, and we had like issues as well with employment and stuff like that. And that really put me off hiring anyone. So when I first started the business, I told Ronald, I said, we're not hiring anyone at all. We're just going to do it all ourselves, right? And then as we started growing and as work started piling, there's so much you can do. So I reluctantly hired a virtual assistant,
Hmm.
and we've had a virtual assistant helping us for not the same person, but the person helping us for the last, I think, 3+ years now.
Hmm.
And obviously, when the other concern is, whether you can trust the person, rely on the person, and lastly, also you have to find the funds to actually pay the person. So these were like my three main concerns. However, we've have somehow managed. The funds have come to actually, be able to support that person as well. So
Amazing.
again, when you need help, sometimes when you're trying to worry about where's the money, where's the funds going to come in to feed another person, you just have to just realize that it will work out. Obviously, you'll have to do the work, but it will work out.
Yeah. No, that's really true. And there's do you know the Eisenhower matrix of prioritization? So,
Yeah,
delegate, delete. Is it important? I think these little tricks help you realize that there are some things that aren't worth you doing after a certain
true.
point in your journey.
Yeah,
And VAs are perfect to help with that. But
exactly.
also, sometimes you need to, what's it, speculate to accumulate. You need to put the money out there to get the person who will then
Yeah,
help you make more money as well. So
exactly.
it's finding that balance, but it's hard. It's really hard, like you say.
It is
But
hard. And the other thing, well, this is something personal as well. I love to, before I delegate, I love to actually learn it myself. So, for example, we've currently have two YouTube channels running, and I was actually editing the videos and doing the thumbnails myself as well. So what the good thing about that is when you know what you're doing, and then
mhm,
when you've delegated, say something happens to the person or they can't produce it, the good thing is you still have your own self to rely back on to actually finish the job if it's an
yeah,
urgent deadline. So that's been a great help as well. Sometimes it's not just delegating, but it's important to actually learn as well. Obviously, you can't learn everything, but at least the basics you should also know.
absolutely. And getting that process so it can be shared. So
Yeah.
that standard operating procedures in
Mhm.
corporate terms. getting that process. So if it's not you, it's somebody else. That if it's not that someone else, it's a new someone else. But the process
Yes.
is always the same. It's just
Yeah.
who's doing it. And in the long term, it should save you some hassle.
Yeah.
That's what. So you've got 2 YouTube channels, you've got 2 books, you've got your clinics. What else have you got? Anything else we've missed?
The cooking show, obviously,
Cooking
and
show.
yeah, that's about it. I think that's
So
keeping
what
us
do you
busy.
what do you do
We
to
do also
relax?
we do also write blogs. So again, blogs on our website. And again, I used to be writing those blogs in the beginning, and then obviously now I've actually delegated to my VA. And one interesting thing I learned is I had a few VAs before this current person, and they were never doing the blogs because I thought they were just going to be experts in social media, videos, things like that. And then when this new person came along, I asked her, "Will you be willing to do blogs?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really glad I asked because I would have never thought of asking. But because I've asked and she said yes, she wasn't sort of an expert in doing blogs, but I explained to her, I said, this is what I want. And she tried it, and I'm really happy with her work. So, again, in life, what you can learn is that, if you don't ask, you never know.
Absolutely. I think also the last thing that I've learnt, and it's from one of my favourite films, Remember the Titans, but they're all falling out and not getting on, and they're saying you're not doing your job, and then one guy goes, attitude reflects leadership.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're not a good leader, then how can you expect your team to follow suit? But if you are a good leader, you've got to have trust in your people,
Mm-hmm.
give them the tools to succeed, but also, lay out the process so they know what to do. And
Yeah.
sometimes just saying, could you do this is
Mm-hmm.
the difference between them doing it and not doing it because they've never
Yeah.
been asked before.
Yeah.
So it's really, really good.
And the other thing I'd like to share is that even with our customers and even with the the VAs and all that, I've always tried my best to treat them as people rather than as
Mm.
transactional relationship. So even with the customers, sometimes it's not always asking about how are you, how is your health, and have you bought this, have you bought that. When you're coming back to see us, those sort of always the transactional type questions. There are
Yeah,
sometimes many of them I'll just send them a joke that I find that they may resonate with, or I might just say good morning, how are you, that's it, and not even ask them about anything to do with their health or anything to do with the business side of it itself. And I think people tend to appreciate that because you're treating them more like a person, as a friend, rather than just a customer all the time, or a member of staff.
absolutely. No, wonderful. Thank you. One last question for you.
Sure.
This is the miracle question for my therapy sessions.
Okay.
If you wake up tomorrow and the world is the way you want it to be, what does that world look like to you?
It will be everyone getting along with each other and being healthy, enjoying the life that they have.
Amazing. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Who else should I talk to, do you think?
Who else should
Any
you talk?
recommend
Oh,
any other recommendations?
well, you can obviously interview Ronald, my husband, and obviously that
Could do that.
there's obviously a few in our mutual group that I'm sure we can recommend as well. So I'm not too sure whether
I
you've
will
asked
harass you.
them yet.
I'll harass you to get Ronald's details as well. Thank
Oh
you.
yes, yeah. I'll
Brilliant.
obviously have to set up the technical bits for him, but after that he'll be able to.
Bless. Well, you saw I had problems as well with my technical
Oh
bits as
yes,
well. So sometimes you can prepare for it and it still doesn't work. So
yeah.
there we go. No, thank you ever so much.
You're welcome.
So that's kind of it. Are you happy with that? Anything?
No, no, I think it's fine. It's
Cool.
totally fine.
So what I would like to do, so I'm launching at the end of July.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm getting all my recordings. Well, I'm gonna get 10 recordings done up front, hopefully by
Okay.
the end of June. So I've got 6 to drop and then 4 moving, like
All
one a
right.
week moving forward.
Okay.
So I've always got a cycle.
Yeah.
If you've got any links you want to send me, any images you want me to use, I'm happy to do that and
Sure.
just kind of put you everywhere and see
Okay.
what I can do.
All right.
Is
And
that all
then
right?
if you can send me the edited recording as well, that'll be great,
Yeah,
and then I can
yeah,
share.
I will. You can have that, and I'll
Okay.
put it on my. I will be putting it on my YouTube, the video, and then
Okay.
you can put it on yours as well if you want
Yeah.
to. Like,
Okay.
it's all fair.
All right. That's fine. Thank you so much for
No,
organizing
no,
this.
Thank you for coming on and being patient and your story is wonderful. Like I love listening to it. So thank you ever so much.
Yeah.
And keep doing your stuff and I'll keep supporting.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Have a great rest of the day and I'll catch you later then.
Okay, you too. Thanks, Philippa.
Cheers.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.